Sour topics. Sour topics. From a sour guy. From a sour guy. These are the Lemons with Clemmons.
What is up, everybody? This is Evan with the Lemons with Clemmons. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the trial going on with Kyle Rittenhouse. The verdict just came in and he came in not guilty. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But first of all, thank you for watching. Welcome to the podcast and welcome to the show. So, first of all, we all know there's a huge trial going on. The conclusion came today, this afternoon, actually. All right, hopefully I have this out in time. It might be the next day, okay? I'm still having to, it's a little bit later in the day, so I'm hoping to get all the editing done and it's out. But I do want to talk about this trial. It has been huge. It's been all over the media. And so let's give a breakdown of it, okay? So if you're not aware, okay, the Kyle Rittenhouse, we'll start from the top, okay? Back during when COVID was huge and we had a lot of the Black Lives Matter protests and what I would call, in a lot of ways, riots going on where cities are literally being burned to the ground. In Kenosha, Wisconsin, a man, Jacob Blake, was shot and killed by police officers. Now, this is in the wake of everything going on with George Floyd. And so everybody was in uproar because it was a police officer that killed a black man. All right. Whatever your opinions are on everything with police brutality and racism and within the United States, this was actually kind of a little bit crazy because the entire thing was based on a man who was had committed sexual assault. His ex had said that he was there and was dangerous, and he had a knife on him, was told multiple times to put the knife down. It did not, and was shot and killed by police officers. Everybody looked at it as just police shooting a black man. Now, this could be a whole nother episode. All that the whole point, that this is not the point of this podcast. The point is the aftermath of it. Once he was shot and killed, there was more protests and happened in Kenosha. Okay, during these protests, a young man, all right, he was only 17 years old at the time. He's 18 now. Was in Kenosha. And he had an AR-15 on him and shot and killed two people and injured another. He was on trial. I keep wanting to say is on trial, but after 2.5, 3 weeks, the trial's over now. He's not on trial anymore because he's been acquitted of all charges, but he was on trial for murder. Basically saying that he went in there with the idea to shoot and kill protesters. And this entire trial, if you watched it, was a complete joke, okay? And we're going to go into it. If you haven't seen any of the footage of the trial, haven't watched anything, if you're only watching some of the media, what you would know is completely different. And what I want to do is bring you some facts, all right, and get the actual information out there, because there's a lot of information I think people just are misinformed. If you just listen to a lot of what the media said or what Twitter or Facebook says, you would believe that this man, Kyle Rittenhouse, this white man, is this racist, white supremacist, all this other stuff. Well, none of that's true. All the people involved were all white. He's white. The people that were shot were all white. Had nothing to do with race of any kind. Okay, so that we can kind of clear that out. Okay, the other thing that they would have you believe is that he took a firearm to across state lines and killed these people. Okay, 2 people did die. All right, but the entire thing, that gun was not his. He did not take it across lines. People said that he went to a different city that wasn't even his. He lives with his mom in northern Illinois, but his father and his grandmother both live in Kenosha, so that is also his community. He was asked by his friend to help protect a business. His friend was asked by that business to protect it because they didn't want their business burnt down or looted or anything like that. So his friend gifted him and planned on giving him this AR-15 a week later when he was going to turn 18. So his friend gives him this AR-15 to help guard this building. Now, Kyle Rittenhouse was a lifeguard and trained in EMT, or basic medical needs. And to be honest, the entire night, and there's footage going through the entire night. So you can follow every step of the way. And he was actually there doing what most people wouldn't do and actually being more of a hero than what you would be led to believe. This man was helping put out fires. He was helping people that were injured. There's a video of him, yelling that he was friendly to other people, whether or not he had a gun, and asking if people needed medical help. Okay, so if you were just watching the media circus, you wouldn't know any of this stuff. All this stuff from a lot of people that I've talked to had no idea any of this information I'm already giving you at the very beginning of this. Okay, so when we keep looking forward and we find out throughout the night there was a man that said to him and his friends, if we find any of you by yourselves, we will kill you. So he was also threatened that night. That didn't stop him. It didn't waver him. This kid with an AR-15 had no intention of hurting anybody, was only trying to help. So, turns out, first of all, the gun charge that was originally on this trial was thrown out by the judge. The reason is because, and even the judge stated himself, it was a very poorly written law by the legislature of Wisconsin, saying that the length of the barrel could not be any shorter than X amount of inches. And the purpose of the law was so that kids 16, 17 years old could go hunting. It was honestly about hunting rifles, but because it was so poorly written, all it did is talk about the length of the barrel. So because it was so poorly written, he technically was legally allowed to carry this firearm because the barrel was not too short, whether or not he was 18 or not. So that got thrown out. So anybody that's saying anything about the gun charges and upset about that, well, that's a state legislature thing. It has nothing to do with any federal laws. He didn't carry it across state lines. The person that owned it did, legally carried it, gifted it to his friend, and it wasn't illegal for him to have that gun on him. Okay, so he was there, and in the midst of everything going on, he was helping put out fires, and then he found out about a dumpster fire, about 3 blocks down. So Kyle, instead of putting his gun down so anybody could take it, has it on a slings it around his shoulder, gets a fire extinguisher, and starts running down the road to go to this fire to help put it out with a fire extinguisher. Well, he's on his own. And now these people, one of them, including the person that threatened to kill him, all come out of nowhere to try to get him and attack him. So the first person comes and tries to take his gun. I'm sorry, but if someone is coming after your gun and trying to grab the gun from you, that is a threat. Kyle never threatened anybody. There was no threat from him. So everything in this case was completely self-defense. The person tried to reach for his gun and take it, and he ended up shooting him. The person was bleeding out on the ground. He looks up and he goes to the police line. There was a police line because the city or the state had told the police to stand down and allow things to happen. There was a police line so that people couldn't pass. So a lot of this has to do with the lack of police already there. Part of the prosecution asked, you're not a fireman, why are you doing it? Well, no one else was doing it, so he was trying to do the right thing. So he is on his way to the police line because somebody was hurt. But in the midst of this, other people were attacking him. The next person comes to him because while he's running, he trips and falls. And a person comes with a skateboard, swings it, hits him in the head, not once, but twice, and is going for the third time before Kyle shoots and kills this other person that is attacking him aggressively. And the prosecution was saying the guy wasn't holding a bat or a gun or anything. Well, a skateboard is still deadly. He was also being kicked and being kicked in the head. Again, a self-defense thing. He shoots and kills the person that had hit him already twice with the skateboard and going for the third hit. I'm surprised he even had his wherewithal whatsoever to actually aim and shoot. All right, and now through all this stuff, there's only a few shots fired, and basically all of them hit too, which is crazy. So your adrenaline's pumping, I'm sure. All right, and so this other person is killed. Next person, who also testified against him and lived, comes with him, has a gun in his pocket, and is pulling it out and aiming at him. And he shoots him in the bicep, and it tears out his bicep. Now, I would say that's also self-defense. So he was protecting himself in all three moments. The last person with a gun actually pointed at him before the gun was raised. There's even footage of him having the gun pointed, didn't see anything, and is lowering the gun, and then the gun is coming out to be aimed at him, and that's when the gun comes up and he shoots again. It's all on tape. Everything's on tape. It was all shown in court. And the person during the trial even said out loud, he did not aim and shoot until he had a gun pointed at Kyle. So that would be what we call self-defense. And it doesn't matter if you're in the United States or any country, at a certain point, self-defense is a natural human right. This idea that he went here with a gun to cause havoc and stuff is just insane. None of that happened. He wasn't there. And the thing is, all right, one thing that happened that never happens in a murder trial is the defendant took the stand. Kyle took the stand. And if you, basically anybody that is an attorney will tell you, if you don't need to take the stand as a defendant, you don't have to. But first of all, the prosecution in this was just god-awful. It was the worst prosecution. Like, it was astounding to watch it. It was so bad that even, and I got a clip here to show you. All right, I'm gonna put it up here in a second, where the judge just berates the attorney more than once. He did it twice. He asked the jury to leave and just berates the prosecution because, first of all, as soon as he goes up there, the prosecution starts questioning why Kyle did not talk to the police. It's like, well, if you're innocent, why didn't you say anything to the police? Why didn't you state your case? Well, that is your Fifth Amendment right to not have silence, to not have to say anything and not imply your own guilt. That is a normal right and a privilege that most countries also share. And so the judge said, I have no idea why you would even question him on his Fifth Amendment right. And here, let's put it up real quick.
Why would you think that made it okay for you, without any advance notice, to bring this matter before the jury? I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, I'll leave it at that. So I don't know what you're up to.
And this is the first time I've brought clips into it. I know I put pictures up, but this is the first time I have clips, so hopefully everything comes in all right. But it's astounding that that's even a thing. All right. The second thing he got yelled about is because before a trial begins, the prosecution and the defense, sorry, I can't talk, will go on about what they're going to be talking about and what the evidence they can and can't bring in. And one of the things that the prosecution brought up was one of the things they've already decided cannot be brought in. And a lot of times these things are not allowed to be brought in because they have nothing to do with the case. It has something to do with his state of mind weeks or months before or after the incident. And that has nothing to do with the incident itself. We all say stupid shit sometimes, laughing or whatever, and don't mean it. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but either way, the defense was not allowed to bring it up and gets called out. And it almost got to the point, I think the defense was going so poorly that they were trying to get their own mistrial, is what it looked like. And that's one of the things they were trying to do is get, the defense was asking for a mistrial with prejudice, meaning that you could not try Kyle Rittenhouse again for the crime because there's just so much bullshit going on. So, not only that, okay, but while the jury was still deliberating, they get bussed in and out from the courthouse. During this, a reporter was following the bus, gets pulled over and charged, and it's from MSNBC, trying to figure out who the jury are, which is illegal. That's jury tampering, and could end up bringing pressure to the jury to decide a certain way. So if you're looking at the media to see the narrative that they're trying to bring, and then all of a sudden you're trying to figure out who the jury are and being directed by their boss, that looks pretty bad. And they're coming down with a lot of charges. And so actually the judge told MSNBC they were no longer allowed in the courtroom. That's probably something you haven't seen on the news also. And that's kind of a big deal. All right, and it kind of shows how shady some things are that are going on. And I think there's a bigger conspiracy here, and I think that Kyle's trying to be shown as the person that they wanted, a monolith that they wanted to take down to prove a point. And that's kind of the conspiratorial side of me. But there is a lot to it that just, it doesn't sit right with me. It's just a lot of false narratives, honestly. And if you actually watched the trial or got the information, you could see this is a pretty clear-cut case. Especially, there is a picture, I'm going to put it up here, where the defense, or not the defense, the prosecution literally face palms as soon as Kyle, or somebody, Grossman, something, I forget his name, honestly, but says that he didn't shoot until I was pointing a gun at him. The prosecution knew instantly their case was done for. Another time, the prosecution tried to compare it to Call of Duty and saying because he plays a lot of Call of Duty, he's a murderer. And then the other thing that was getting thrown all around, the prosecutor was carrying the AR-15, the gun, with his finger on the trigger and pointing it at people. We already had an Alec Baldwin situation, didn't we? I mean, come on, we don't need anything. I mean, just the lack of professionalism in it. And, you know, when I was scrolling through Reddit, it was very quickly, but a lot of times it's fun to go through Reddit. If you sort by controversial or top or best or whatever, and you'll see the different types of comments. But any way that I tried to filter it, when even Reddit is saying the prosecution messed this up and everybody saw this coming, that's a pretty clear-cut case, because Reddit is kind of leans to a more liberal side, because there's a lot of younger people that are, you know, watching, you know, MSNBC and whatnot. And so it's interesting to see the different narratives that are being brought on. It's interesting to see how nobody really knew the actual facts going on. They just thought certain things. But it was a pretty clear-cut case. All right, and it's astounding. All right, so anyway, when Kyle took the stand, he actually broke down and had a panic attack while trying to explain everything.
Once I take that step back, I look over my shoulder, and Mr. Rosenbaum was now running from my right side, and I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski. And there were three people right there.
Take a deep breath, Kyle.
That's what That's what I run.
We're going to just take time for our break anyway. You can just relax for a minute, sir. We're going to take a break about 10 minutes, and please don't talk about the case during the break. Read, watch, or listen to any kind of trap.
And then you have celebrities like LeBron James making fun of him, saying it's crocodile tears, and other people are saying he was acting and all this other stuff. And that is just so sick. It is disgusting to me. And the reason it's disgusting to me, okay, is these people that don't know anything and are trying to push a narrative because that's all they know. What we don't realize, and what nobody takes into account for, is that this was a 17-year-old kid, now an 18-year-old young man, okay? And this was almost like a war zone situation, there's absolutely no way this kid doesn't have PTSD. He showed a panic attack, and then if you watch the verdict, he has a panic attack and didn't look like a guilty kid when he got let off and, was acquitted of the charges. He was in relief because he's just been thrown through the mud so much. And it's astounding. It's absolutely astounding of how somebody could say that about an 18-year-old as if they're just this monster. I think that we a lot of times take the human out of it, and it's not right. All right, it's not okay. This is an 18-year-old that has killed 2 people. In self-defense or not, that's still going to stick with you. All you can do is reassure. And one of the things that came up during this trial that I do not agree with is people were talking about the criminal histories of all 3 people. Now, I do find it interesting that these 3 people were even there. One of them was a child molester that was let off. Person was, had a felony burglary, and all these other issues. It doesn't matter. The people that died, the people that were shot, it doesn't matter what their background is. Maybe it's okay for Kyle because maybe it'll help him have a clearer conscience. But I don't think that it's important to know if they were a child molester or if they did commit a felony in their life or were let out, because it has nothing to do with what happened. And I think it's wrong to bring that into it. It has nothing to do and should have nothing to do with Kyle having self-defense or not, because that doesn't show anything other than what the videotape shows. The videotape shows him being attacked and shooting only at the last second when needed. He had a gun the entire time. If he wanted to just kill protesters, he could have just sat there and started picking people off. And it never happened until people were after him and he was in a vulnerable situation, like falling onto his back, which was whenever he tripped and fell when he's running. And the other thing, and I didn't even bring this up, he was running to the police line to tell them what had happened. What kind of guilty person goes and tells on themselves? He knew what had happened was serious, and he wanted to get help. He was trying to do the right thing, as much as nobody believes it and wants to believe their own, thing. And you can, but whatever you believe, it's obviously not the facts if you don't look at what the facts are. So it's crazy to think that this 18-year-old, their life is going to be completely different because there's a media circus around it. The state already called the National Guard to be on standby in case there's another riot because people don't know any better. And now, I think Kyle Rittenhouse goes on a huge campaign of lawsuits against all the news outlets that called him a murderer or a white supremacist or any of these other things, just like what happened with the Covington Catholic case when there was a protest and they tried to say that these white supremacist kids were causing a ruckus when they were the ones being messed with. And there was a, several $1 million lawsuit towards CNN for calling them a white supremacist for no reason. Same thing happened here. And I think Kyle Rittenhouse is going to make out with a lot of money for slander and libel and is going to go after the people that basically dragged his name through the mud. And you know what? He should. He absolutely should do that. Because it's not right to be constantly on defense like that. It's as if it doesn't matter if it's Fox News or CNN or MSN. It doesn't matter what news outlet. If a news outlet comes up with a narrative, they try to stick with it, and they're, instead of doing actual journalism anymore, they picked a narrative and are trying to build a story around that. Another good case is Dave Portnoy, all right, who is huge. He's the one bite pizza king that everybody knows about. All right. He has, these reviews where he takes a bite of pizza. He always says one bite, but he eats like 18 bites out of this giant piece of pizza. But he is an entertaining guy. He was with Barstool Sports and has a few other things going on. And he's a self-made entrepreneur that just, it's well known that he's a deviant, a sexual deviant, and has sex with a lot of like Instagram models and stuff like that. And all of a sudden a Business Insider article ran, basically not technically calling him a rapist, but basically like headlines saying that he is had aggressive sex and all this other stuff. We're trying to paint him as a monster without saying that he raped. And so they were really skating the line as much as they could because there's a narrative because they don't agree with them, basically. And I believe that was proven pretty. He went on himself and debunked everything from Business Insider by showing text messages and DMs where the girls were all, consensual and all this other stuff. And they basically just responded with, "We never said he was a rapist." They got their narrative across, and that's all that matters. And the people that are going to believe that narrative are going to believe it. And, the rest of the rational human beings will know better. And it's just wild to me that this is where we're at now. If it's what happens in politics all the time on both sides. All right. This isn't one-sided by any means, but we're so worried about building a narrative and sticking to it that we don't want to look at the actual facts because we don't want things to go against what we know or what we're comfortable with knowing. And that's a problem. It's a problem, I think, with our nation. And it goes back to kind of what I talked about in an earlier podcast about social media, because everybody lives in their own echo chamber. So no one wants to look at the outside facts. They want to stay in that echo chamber. And now you got Facebook going into Meta, and that's going to be something else I really want to talk about. And I want to do a follow-up on crypto. Real quick, let me look here. I'm going to make this a short podcast because I want to get this out pretty quick. I apologize for taking so long on the last podcast. There's been a lot going on. I've been trying to battle sickness, and I don't want to be on here sniffling and coughing and whatnot. I didn't have COVID. Good for me. I do appreciate the people that reached out and asking if I was going to be doing another podcast and whatnot. I love doing this. I do it. I love hearing my own voice, first of all, and I want to continue to have these conversations to spark something. So if you have any interesting things to say about this trial, there's a lot more to say about it, but the facts are it was self-defense. The prosecution was dog shit at the end of the day. They should have done a better job, or they shouldn't have gone for a murder charge. I think if they tried to go with reckless endangerment, involuntary manslaughter, I think they probably had a better chance. I think they pushed too high of charges to make a point, to try to silence anybody that doesn't want to go with the narrative of what they can and can't do during any of these protests or riots. Because there was a lot of controversy over whether people agreed with the protests, or even should call them riots, or thought it was okay that people were burning it down. And again, that's a whole nother podcast that I could go on forever about. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that the facts are there and you are all aware that there is a lot more to it than what you're just told on Facebook or Twitter or, apparently some of these news outlets. So anyway, thank you for watching. This is Evan with the Lemons with Clemmons.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Lemons with Clemmons. If you want to hear more, be sure to like and subscribe on Facebook and YouTube.